Welcome to the film press conference. Just before I hand over to Craig, I want to make another public thank you to this group of people who have worked incredibly hard over the last few weeks.
I too want to take this opportunity to thank the jury. We came together largely as strangers, and I think that we part as friends, and we've got to know each other pretty well over the last few days, and they've done a fantastic job. Is anybody listening? They've done a fantastic job and worked tirelessly, and I think with complete openness, honesty, integrity, courage. It's been a phenomenal effort and an exhausting one, but they should be congratulated and applauded, I think. And I think we speak for everybody when I say we're very proud and confident about the decisions that we've taken. So, this year, film was of a very high standard. There was tremendous work in most of the categories this year, and from many parts of the world. Over the past several years, people have been saying that perhaps film is dying a slow death as other forms of media have risen to prominence. And I think what's very clear this year that as digital platforms have developed the bandwidth to handle video, film is back in a big way. There's an appetite for film and video content like there's never been before. And that appetite is being fed by some brilliant work. So as a consequence of that, this year there are more golds than there have been for the past couple of years. There are 21 golds this year across both the A categories, which is essentially broadcast and cinema, and the B categories. So to be clear, there are more categories in which awards are given this year. In particular, internet film, interactive film, integrated film, and film for other screens. And there was some very strong work in those categories. So let's just talk a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the difference essentially between broadcast and online film. I'm not saying that they're entirely worlds apart, but there are some important things to recognise. It's a little bit like apples and pears. In the broadcast world, one of the things you have to deal with is fixed time lengths. In the online world, there is no fixed time length. There are issues around regulation in broadcast which don't exist in the online world. But the fundamental difference is the difference between push and pull. What I mean by that is that in the broadcast world, there are really ideas in film that are seeking an audience. In the online world, it's much more about ideas that an audience seeks, actually discovers. And there was tremendous work of both types here at the festival this year. So it was a pioneering year really for the festival to embrace other film content for the first time in the film category. And there's clear recognition that there are new creative opportunities now in film. So it's a very buoyant and wonderful time, I think, to be making film content in the advertising business. We took a landmark decision this year because we were for the first time dealing with broadcast film and non-broadcast film, and we discussed for hours, in fact, last night, how to reconcile the two, until we took the decision for the first time in the festival's history to in fact award 2 Grand Prix. There's one Grand Prix for the Halo 3 campaign and another Grand Prix for Cadbury Gorilla. And they're both phenomenal pieces of work. Would you like to see them? So can we play these, please?
I was a sniper, used a standard high-powered sniper rifle at 600 yards, it would go through about 13 feet of flesh and bone.
What about you?
Well, I just a shotgun.
Could you tell us a bit about that one?
This one, sure. We saw a lot of these. This is an old Covenant weapon. It's a spike rifle. We call it the Spiker.
And who used it?
Well, the birds mostly.
Can you show us how it works?
Sure. They used it as a handgun. That was heavy. Holding an enemy weapon like this feels. I don't like it. If you'd have told me a few years ago we would be here in this place talking about this, I would have said, no way, it's not going to happen. If there's one reason why we're here, I would say it's because of the chief.
It's hard to do justice to this campaign in a press conference. There's in fact three. There's a series of films for Halo 3. Each of them immensely powerful, I think, but we'll only have time to show you one right now. And the other piece we'll show you is Cadbury Gorilla. Any questions? 25 to 28, because they're essentially public service, and 28 is a craft category for music. So those are not allowed to be, they're not eligible for the Grand Prix discussion. Golds in every other category are, of course, eligible. So what we did is we had a discussion around each of those pieces of work, and we were very, very thorough, I can promise you, very thorough on the way through the judging, very rigorous in the judging. So we were very familiar with all the work that had been awarded gold. What we then did is, through secret ballot, everyone had the opportunity to vote for up to 3 pieces of work from those golds. Not in any particular order, but they could choose 3 things that they wanted to advance to the next round, which was just to eliminate the discussion down to 3 things. So everybody exercised that right to vote. And as a result of that first round discussion, it was clear that there were 2 pieces of work really in contention: Gorilla and Halo, the Halo campaign. So we then went through quite a lot of discussion because, you know, perhaps predictably, we're looking at very, very good work that's representative of broadcast filmmaking and online film content. And it's as we discovered, having, as I say, discussed it and debated it and had fairly animated, colourful discussion, it was in the end impossible to reconcile, and maybe more importantly, a little bit futile, when essentially what you've got is fantastic work in both spaces. And it seemed a little unfair in the end, after 2 hours of debate, to try and force one of them through a particular gate, really at the expense of the other. So we then took a decision that the best way to treat these pieces of work would be to award 2 Grand Prix. And we took a vote on that, and we voted unanimously in favour of doing that. And so the Grand Prix decisions, plural, this year, have the 100% unanimous agreement of the jury. Does that answer the question?
I have a question. Teresa Howard from USA Today. Hi.
Hi.
Just to clarify one thing before my question. Gorilla was just the web, correct? Or was it on broadcast as well?
It's broadcast.
Okay. And the web as well? Or was it just broadcast?
It was entered as a broadcast film.
Okay. My question is just looking at the 2 pieces of work. Halo was very multimedia, and Gorilla was sort of a simpler piece of work, I think, just in terms of how it was used. Could you talk a little bit about what made you decide for each of those? What about the Halo work made it win, and what about the Gorilla work specifically made it win?
Yeah, well, some of the other guys should speak up on this, but here's just a quick view from me on both pieces. As I said, I think they're both to have to try and eliminate one of these great pieces of work for the sake of satisfying the rules that have predated the festival this year. Much better to celebrate both pieces and make sure that they get the proper exposure in the industry, that more people get to see them for the brilliant bits of thinking and execution that they are, by giving them equal weight this year.
Anybody want to say anything?
I think it was actually less polarising than you imagine. The big question really with the jury was between, the big questions that we had were between the kind of internet films of like Halo 3 and maybe the more expansive pieces like HBO to the more broadcast pieces like Gorilla. I don't think really, surprisingly, I think the Gorilla was quite clearly the choice of the jury.
I mean, it's an extremely impressive piece of footage, Gorilla, if you watch it as a body. And I mean, the effect that it's had in the room and around the world is quite astonishing. It's probably one of the most captive pieces of communication we saw in the film category. How it just locks you in from the very word go and just holds the viewer in anticipation. I think that's clearly what made it stand out.
Question, frankly, because you're saying we should be evaluating creativity, not effectiveness, and now you're asking a question about how it works for the brand. So, but let me sort of break it down a little bit. I think our concern is with creativity and recognising and rewarding creativity. Absolutely. So if we just talk about Gorilla for a moment, it's a courageous piece of work, in my view. It defies many of the conventions of confectionery advertising. If I asked you all to, in the next 30 seconds, write a television ad for a chocolate, I bet most of you in the room would lapse into those conventions very quickly. We'd have someone eating the chocolate bar. You'd get to see the chocolate. You'd probably see them making the chocolate at some point. A lot. You'd have a lot of sweeping, soaring, cheesy music over the top of it, and you'd have someone talking at you incessantly. What Gorilla does is it challenges all those assumptions and subverts them all, and it says essentially that chocolate's about pleasure. And so the communication that comes from this brand should be pleasurable, entertaining. It's a great piece of entertainment.
Just keep talking. When Gorilla was being played, I noticed there were people at the back singing,
people smiling and laughing as it was being played. And I think that's an incredibly powerful idea for chocolate. As Craig said, it brings pleasure, it brings joy, it brings enjoyment. And that commercial expressed that probably better than any of us have ever seen before for that category, and particularly for that client.
If you watch people in the auditorium tonight when that gets played, I bet they're struggling to keep their arms down. Everyone's waiting for that moment. You know, everyone's going to want to drum along. And are political, full of block voting and lobbying and deals done outside the room that are brought into the room. And that a lot of people had said to me quietly before the festival that that's something that really needs to be handled. Look out for that. What I said last night, and I'll say it again, I meant it then, I mean it now, is there was none of it. There was none of it. You know, what I said on day one to the jury was, you're not here representing your country at Cannes, you're here representing the best of this industry to the wider world. That means ad students who are just hanging on the decisions that come from Cannes every year. Our colleagues and peers in the industry elsewhere, the media. You know, the decisions that we're taking here are, you know, of massive consequence for the industry for the next 12 months. You know, things that are Cannes winners are significant. They get shown to clients. They're a source of stimulus, inspiration. So I think everyone took that responsibility kind of, you know, very seriously. I mean, we had a lot of fun, and there was a lot of laughter, but we took that really seriously. And so, you know, the suggestion that that may be an issue this year, I can promise you it just wasn't.
I'd like to know the jury's thoughts on gas entered by Ogilvy and Mather India, which won the silver.
Get used to tension.
I'll talk about it.
I think we were all very impressed by gas. I think it was a remarkable, if you like, demonstration. And
that's a lot of work, and you have to assume that the people who entered it thought it was pretty good to start with, and most of it was. To make the short list from 4,500 is some accomplishment. From a pool of good work to make the very top of it is some accomplishment. For it to be elevated anywhere from the shortlist is extraordinary. And you know, you are up against the best bits of commercial filmmaking in the world in the last 12 months. You know, I think that the people that put that work together, they shouldn't be feeling disappointment. I think they should be thrilled that it got a silver at this festival.
Marcelo again from Brazil. I would like to know your words about JWT results. Apparently you've got 3 lions to...
There were a couple of categories where there was no work awarded beyond the shortlist. So A12, miscellaneous. And there were 26 pieces of work entered in the festival, and nothing made it through. Mobile film, and there were only 6 pieces entered. We saw them all. There was nothing very exciting in that space this year. Interactive TV, there were 23 entries this year. Nothing that tickled us enough. And I think interactive TV, it's very new, and the platform itself is a bit agricultural still, and there are limitations with what you can do. And at least this year, there was no work there that was sufficiently strong to get up. But in terms of trends, and this might answer the other question, and there were some other categories that weren't especially strong that got a bronze or a couple of bronzes, others that were very strong. But in terms of trends, I don't think this is a trend, I just think it's perennial truth, which is the work that does here year in, year out, and certainly did well this year, is the work that is brilliantly conceived and immaculately executed. You know, and I think that the value of strong ideas is more important now than ever. And people always talk about the consumer being in control. I think consumers are overwhelmed by choice, and the way to help them navigate that choice is to put really strong ideas out there for brands. Helps make it easy.
It's funny because with the internet category and the mobile category and the interactive TV categories and things like that, it felt like the world is still trying to come to terms with the media side of it and everything like that, and it feels like everyone's still experimenting and trying to work it out. I thought that part of the judging was quite hard, because there was so many different pieces of work, and it's quite hard to rate a talk show with a piece of mobile content. Very difficult to value those two up, but it felt like throughout the entire segment of the internet or other or short film mobile content, that everyone is still trying to come to terms with the experiment. That's why the pieces that were good stood out extremely well, head and shoulders above everything else, and it just felt that there was a lot of very basic creative that was done, and everyone seems to be learning as we're going along with this category. I mean, it was quite interesting. There wasn't one single country that stood out in this area. It just felt like the whole world was just beginning to start dabbling with it. So I think it's probably one of the most exciting areas of creativity for agencies and clients to start getting involved with, because the limitations are incredible.
To both press and to film. And in the end it was, I think, quite useful to say to people with their professional hat on, you know, which are the pieces of work, when you're talking about the very, very top of it, which are the pieces of work that you would most like to have been associated with, which are the ones that make you feel envy, jealousy, or humility.
Yes, I had a question about what you...
There would be no place for it here, and that would be a tragedy. So I think that, you know, the principle of having a place for that work to exist in the festival is absolutely the right one and should be completely supported. So my comment about trying to force two great pieces of work through a gate, that may not be the case every year, I suppose, because there may not be two pieces, or there may not be two, one in each space. But this year there was, and that's why it felt like we were going to sacrifice one, and it felt like we were just following the conventions of the festival, rather than recognising equally two amazing pieces of work. So who knows what happens next year, Lara? I mean, I think there's this kind of theory and practice. This year the theory was completely sound and the practice was difficult, but I think we got to the right place. Did what have an effect?
That last year Dove got the Grand Prix.
Well, I think the effect that it had is it opened up the B category. You know, I think it had the effect immediately after the festival. I think it was part of the reason why it became clear that there should be a place for this kind of content officially to exist. So it didn't feel like anyone was bending the rules.
Yes, but I mean more in the
social responsibility.
Yes, social responsibility in the content of the message itself.
Right, I'm still not quite following the question. Is the question whether that is actually encourage more brands to be socially aware and responsible?
Yes. Did you see this year that there were more that kind of work?
Well, no. I mean, I think it would be misleading to say, to answer any other way. No, I don't think there was any clear evidence of that. There was some very strong work in the public service categories, but I can't recall, you know, any great body of work which was commercially motivated for brands that was suddenly more socially aware.
Basically, I think most jurors tried very hard to judge all the currents, all the different tools we have in our trade to reach people, to touch them. If it's humor, if it's beautifully crafted, if it's, I mean, you will see tomorrow night. It is a brilliant reel because it's got all that. Because the last thing we want is that we give a signal and next year we get 6,000 of the same ads.
All right. Briefly but very heartfelt thank you to this extraordinary group of people on the table, not including myself obviously, but this jury who have come together from all over the world and have given their energy and their time to judge this work over the last few days. I'm in a very privileged position because I can actually sit in the jury rooms and listen to the discussions. And if I told you that they were extremely high quality, I'm sure you wouldn't be surprised. So thank you very much for the entire jury for everything they've done for the festival. And I will hand over straight over to Mark Tutzel, the president of the jury.
Okay, good morning or good afternoon. First of all, just to reiterate that an award show is only as good as its jury, and the value of the award in question is only as good as the jury who actually evaluate that work. And I just want to publicly thank each and every one of the people assembled at this table, including Ty Montague, who unfortunately had to go back to the States, for their time, but more importantly for their intelligence, their creativity and their focus. You know, our goal was very, very simple: to discover the finest thinking, the freshest thinking in the world right now. Work that will really chart a new territory for the industry, and work that, more importantly, will just inspire. Cannes is all about inspiration. It's a wonderful moment in time when the world comes together in one place to look at the work that we produce. It's a barometer of the health of the industry, but more importantly, it's about education and it's about inspiration. And I think the work that we saw over the last week or so was wonderful, was really, really thought-provoking, fresh, new. It stretched the boundaries of communication. It really took full advantage of this limited creative canvas that we have, that we now play in. And there were some brands that really stood out. And they stood out for, I think, one reason, which was they had a comprehensive understanding of human behavior. Communication is based on two very simple things: people and behavior. And I passionately believe that creativity has the power to transform human behavior. And the work in front of you is some of the finest thinking in the world today. But more importantly, it moved people. It involved people in different ways. And the entry point into the connection between people and the brand were very different, but each got to the same destination. There was a conversation, there was a fusion between the two worlds. And it was work that really did surprise and delight everybody. So we split this year into two categories again. I mean, I think there will be a moment in time when everything comes together. And we're looking for ideas, and we're looking for the biggest ideas of the year. And the two Grand Prix that we awarded, we believe, for different reasons, represent groundbreaking thinking. They chart a new territory for the industry. They're a glimpse into the future of what we do. In the case of the Titanium Award, it really is pure digital. It really embraces everything that is new: entertainment, utility, interactivity, bringing it together in a fresh, new, nimble way. It also captured the essence of the brand. A 24/7 site that had the ability to change, evolve over time, entertain you, reward you each time you come into contact with it. And it really surprised everybody. The initial reaction was, wow, what's this? Which was amazing. That's what Titanium is all about. It has to stop you in your tracks. It has to make you rethink. It has to make you reappraise this industry. And this work, we believe, I think, takes it to the next level. In integration, Halo 3 stood head and shoulders above the rest. It was, again, rooted in humanity, rooted in storytelling, rooted in again, a connection with people. And just the variety and of the work that they produced along the food chain was so surprising and so new and so engaging. And really, I think within that category and within the industry, I think it is breathtakingly beautiful in its craft, in its thinking, in its execution, and the way it connects with people. And I think it's set a new standard for gaming. I think it's literally game-changing in its thinking, and I think it's work that really takes the two worlds together. So I think, to be honest with you, I mean, we've had obviously a week here to look at the work. I think a good starting point was look at the work that we evaluated this week and just become people viewing it. So let's play both the two Grand Prix in its totality, so you can see the comprehensive nature of both the cases and both the huge scalable ideas.
The online portion of the Halo 3 Believe campaign provided an interactive fly-through of the entire John 117 monument, putting visitors right in the middle of the fight. They could learn more about our enemies and hear first-hand stories from the men who were there.
This was made by a plasma rifle. They used it as a handgun.
Short edited cases, but really the Unilock represents, I think, innovation, and it really transcends the medium and its virtual utility. But I mean, the most important thing is the way it connects and the way it rewards you. I think we have a duty as communicators to enrich people's lives, to reward people every single time they come into contact with the brand. And in this case, not only is it just cool, as cool can be, and so bang on brand, it's so incredibly interactive and rewarding each time you go to it. And it captures the essence of a brand, I think, in a fresh, new, nimble way. Halo 3 was the biggest release in entertainment history. So, I mean, top that. I mean, it's literally a piece of work that captured the hearts and minds of a global population and really opened up the brand in a new way. But again, it had a human story at its heart. It had a conversation, and humanity ran right through, literally right through the veins of the idea. And every time you come into contact with it, it was amazing. Setting an idea 500 years in the future. You know, this is a future-facing idea, a future-facing way of actually communicating, and it's really turned gaming on its head. When you think of gaming in the last decade, the way we've communicated, this is really taking it to the next level. And just in the detail, God is in the detail, and every single component part of it is exquisite in its craft and really rewarding. So, I mean, just questions you've assembled in front of you are some great...
it being an online catalogue is very important too, because you have these actors that are always... They change their clothes as often as Paul Wilmington changes his blazer. Yeah. So you can imagine how dynamic that is.
Reward, once it was integrated, what was the human reward once it touched people, once it connected with people? And we were looking for those big ideas that really were so strong and so different. They really, I think, just made the human reward a much more enriching experience. And the work we wanted also as well to retain the value of titanium and integrated. You know, we don't want to hand out these awards like confetti. You know, there's only one award. There's no gold, silver, or bronze. It's just pure titanium, and it's a different type of metal, a much more precious metal. And I think if that becomes the standard, if that becomes the high bar for people to aim at, I think that will only make people try harder and be inspired to try harder. Also, the effect as well, I think, within the world of clients. Clients now everywhere, certainly within my own experience, everybody is talking about that type of idea because it's representative of tomorrow's thinking. It's a glimpse of the future, it's something different, and I think it's an idea that's huge. You know, we're not talking about individual component parts, we're talking about a big idea. And really that's what we were there to do. But Andrew, do you want to just talk a little bit more about that?
I would, Mark, thank you very much. Where's your teleprompter? I don't see it from here. You know, it was interesting looking at the integrated work, I mean, because the longer that the categories have been going on, the more everybody's sort of getting it, and the entries themselves are these very professional, well done, integrated entries. And I think that it starts to be about, you know, ticking off particular pieces of media. You know, we did, you know, YouTube, we were on there, and we did all these little pieces. You know, and I think it becomes, every time that, you know, it gets too much about media, I think as judges we pull back and we say, what is the idea? Is there an idea here? You know, and is the media directly tied into that idea? Is it really expanding it when those two things come together? So I think that's the reality. I think that ultimately it felt good to, you know, to find a couple integrated pieces that were really doing it right. I mean, we're sort of the top of where integrated should be and where it can go, and not just get too wrapped up in ticking off all the different points of media in an integrated entry. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Integrated will always be until we find another expression of it, but basically that's it at the moment in time. But this degree of integration, I think, is really what I personally saw this week was the connection with people. And I keep coming back to the same topic each time, but all of these pieces have people at the heart of them. What the freak out? I mean, that idea, India, you know, everything, even just human storytelling in Halo 3. I mean, everything is related back to that, and including people in the creation, in the co-creation, and really in the reward. And I think the titanium idea was something that really sets a new course and surprises you and jolts you into trying harder and thinking in a different way. They all embrace technology. They all embrace the new landscape we operate in. But now, what's so exciting is there's an infinite canvas. There are no boundaries to what we're capable of doing. Everything is at our disposal now. But the secret, the key that unlocks the door is the connection, the human connection with people.
All right, and if you could tell us...
More like pinball, and pinball is more interesting. You have to push the ball back, bounce into holes, you don't know how many points you get. It's 30,000 points, and you try to go to that hole again. And that's what digital is, that it's hard. So that's changing advertising. I think even in this like analog piece of work, like the Indian piece of work, is very much pinball advertising in that sense. So I think that's too a part of the future.
Is it all about my hands? Is it all about my hands?
You can use that, just keep talking.
Yes? Oh, okay. Is it all about my hands? I don't know, thought something. I don't think we judge or we awarded something because it's digital. I think it's because it's great. Doesn't matter, but maybe we are coming to a new age that doesn't matter if it's digital, if it's not digital. I don't care about it. It's a great idea guy. It's not a great digital guy. I think...
He's a great guy too.
I think India, when we talk about India, the Indian work, it's so digital, it's so integrated, it's so fantastically new. The black white, it's so digital. It's so digital. It's somebody that use a media of a totally different, new way. Whopper, it's so digital. The problem is that maybe we're not looking for great digital ideas. We talk about it. We talk too much about it because no, that's great because it's digital. No, it's not great because it's digital. It's great. It's good. I think the work to discover the great digital stuff was the cyber judge. The cyber judge had to discover the great cyber work. We're not judging that. But if it's digital, if it's not digital, I don't care. It's a great idea. And that's what counts. That's what we judge. That's what we award. That we're so proud to show that list, to look at that list and look to this and said, oh man, that's great.
Almost make it, in particular Snoop Dogg and Speed's beer deliveries?
I don't think it's because it fitted or didn't fit into the category. I mean, it's a lovely idea, it's a beautiful idea. And I think, and the fact is, these ideas, and the other ideas we were talking about, they're all great ideas. It's simply that the winners, and Mark spoke to the importance of keeping titanium as opposed to any other high level of award. The other ideas were just better, and again, HBO, there was a lot of debate over that. It's beautiful, it's very well crafted, and so on. There's some debate about how many people actually would have been able to see it, and therefore how great a scale idea it was. But we all enjoyed it. I loved it. I love HBO, and it was a uniquely HBO idea, I think, and all the kind of the weaving of the stories and so on. But it didn't make the final six. But it was a beautiful idea.
A lot of the things that we saw were beautiful case studies, but I mean, I was in New York while it was happening. I think the most wonderful thing about it was the projected sort of outdoor thing. I think that was like blew everyone away, and I think that we recognised that was awarded in another show and it deserved it. But from a digital perspective, my feeling was it was brilliant, but it wasn't very deep. It was deep in the sense that you scratch the surface and there was stories to follow, but it wasn't as it's an entertainment brand, and the HBO television shows, I think, are somehow the writing on the television shows is so beautiful and so deep. I think the feeling was that should have crept a little bit more into the digital experience. I think that the struggle we have with digital sometimes is that it hasn't traditionally been a great place for narratives, and I think that this is a great leap forward. But I don't think it's there yet.
I think we're at an incredible inflection point in our industry. I think the separation of a lot of disciplines has meant that people have disintegrated, and I really think that collaboration is what creates, brilliant ideas at the heart of then incredible craft and collaboration. And there was just a sense that, maybe the media industry, media agencies, as much as they think they own the world and they've got the clout, and they feel slightly off the pace of what's, I think, happening in the real world about collaboration and about creativity. I think we all, I think, on this jury believe that we're at our hearts creative, and I think it's a way of being rather than a descriptor on a business card. And I think that that's something that was woefully missing, to be honest, in the Media Lions. It seemed as if more creative agencies were winning the Media Lions, which I think throws a challenge out to the media industry. So, I would just implore on media agencies, they're incredibly smart people there, just to really dig deep and really think about what it's going to take for them to not only succeed in Cannes, but what it requires in terms of creating these incredibly integrated case studies. So yeah, a little bit of a disappointment, but I think it's a challenge, and that's what I think Titanium is all about. It's, next year will be different. I think next year's a completely fresh India's a great example. Doing interviews in India a couple of years ago. What do we need to do to win? What do we need to do? We need to get involved. Look at India. They got involved. They've been a nation that's sort of, been extremely successful here, and vice versa. I think it could be for any discipline. There's an opportunity for not to be too clique as well. I think the media industry has a habit of sort of talking to itself a bit. Anyway.
Award 2 Grand Prix. There's one Grand Prix for the Halo 3 campaign, and another Grand Prix for Cadbury Gorilla. And they're both phenomenal pieces of work. Would you like to see them? Zoe, can we play these, please?
I was a sniper, used a standard high-powered sniper rifle. At 600 yards, it would go through about 13 feet of flesh and bone.
What about you?
Well, I just a shotgun.
Could you tell us a bit about that one?
This one, sure. We saw a lot of these. This is an old Covenant weapon. It's a spike rifle. We call it the Spiker.
Categories, which is essentially broadcast and cinema, and the B categories. So to be clear, there are more categories in which awards are given this year. In particular, internet film, interactive film, integrated film, and film for other screens. And there was some very strong work in those categories. So let's just talk a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the difference essentially between broadcast and online film. I'm not saying that they're entirely worlds apart, but there are some important things to recognise. It's a little bit like apples and pears. In the broadcast world, one of the things you have to deal with is fixed time lengths. In the online world, there is no fixed time length. There are issues around regulation in broadcast which don't exist in the online world. But the fundamental difference is the difference between push and pull. What I mean by that is that the decisions that we've taken. So, this year, film was of a very high standard. There was tremendous work in most of the categories this year, and from many parts of the world. Over the past several years, people have been saying that perhaps film is dying a slow death as other forms of media have risen to prominence. And I think what's very clear this year that as digital platforms have developed the bandwidth to handle video, film is back in a big way. There's an appetite for film and video content like there's never been before. And that appetite is being fed by some brilliant work. So as a consequence of that, this year there are more golds than there have been for the past couple of years. There are 21 golds this year across both the A.
Welcome to the film press conference. Just before I hand over to Craig, I want to make another public thank you to this group of people who have worked incredibly hard over the last few weeks.
I too want to take this opportunity to thank the jury. We came together largely as strangers, and I think that we part as friends, and we've got to know each other pretty well over the last few days, and they've done a fantastic job. Is anybody listening? They've done a fantastic job and worked tirelessly, and I think with complete openness, honesty, integrity, courage. It's been a phenomenal effort and an exhausting one, but they should be congratulated and applauded, I think. And I think we speak for everybody when I say we're very proud and confident about. In the broadcast world, there are really ideas in film that are seeking an audience. In the online world, it's much more about ideas that an audience seeks, actually discovers. And there was tremendous work of both types here at the festival this year. So it was a pioneering year really for the festival to embrace other film content for the first time in the film category. And there's clear recognition that there are new creative opportunities now in film. So it's a very buoyant and wonderful time, I think, to be making film content in the advertising business. We took a landmark decision this year because we were for the first time dealing with broadcast film and non-broadcast film, and we discussed for hours, in fact, last night, how to reconcile the two, until we took the decision for the first time in the festival's history to, in fact,